Thank you for checking out this episode of the Phillip Jordan podcast. I am Phillip Jordan from Last World College Football, 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Wolves Football. You can check out the Phillip Jordan podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. Check out the YouTube channel, the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and if you leave a comment on the video, I will also read that on a future edition of the show. You can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. On today's Phillip Jordan podcast, I will be going over what I missed during my 2-week podcast hiatus, breaking down conference realignment, my thoughts on that, and Arch Manning to Texas. So what have I missed over the last couple of weeks since I have not been podcasting at all? No college football stuff, no NFL stuff, no high school football stuff. I just took a break the last couple of weeks. And of course, college football landscape changed while I was on that break. We talked a lot about NIL and transfer portal stuff the last year, and a lot, how that has changed the college landscape of athletics. Well, I think we really got something that shook it to its core a few weeks ago with realignment. Of course, all this started last year. Well, realignment's been going on for the last 20, 30, 40. The history of college football is all about realignment. This is not a new thing in college athletics. I mean, we've had teams moving all over the place before, but what we've experienced last year after SEC Media Days and now this year going into the media days for the conferences, really, I think, is a seismic shift in college athletics. And college football, and we're going to keep it college football here, but college sports in general, but just to say college football is not the sport. It is not what we once knew it to be. This sport was regional for so long, and the moves that are being made, or the moves that were made a week and a half ago from this recording, really changed that. The sport is national, it's not regional, and it's just the way the sport's going to look in 5 to 10 years is going to be completely different. And I believe I said this on my social media, that I believe that college football, we'll just keep in our lane here, will look like the NFL. I believe there's going to be 2 conferences. There'll be the AFC and the NFC, basically, the Big Ten and the SEC. But I think also a big thing here is, and I'm going to give an NFL history lesson for you guys here on the college football podcast. Of course, you had the NFL for the longest. That was the league. And then the American Football League come along in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s. I'm sure I'm getting something wrong years, but I'm just, the gist of this, you'll understand. They were 2 rivals, like the Big Ten and SEC are. We know the rivalry between the 2 conferences. It is there. They do not like each other. There's not a lot of love lost between the SEC fans and the Big Ten fans, which, of course, I have been known to go at some Big Ten fans on Twitter. It's part of my sarcasm, all in good fun. That's a great conference. The SEC is a great conference. So the AFL and NFL eventually started playing a world championship game, which what we know now today is the Super Bowl. And he played in that one. But eventually, the NFL was just the bigger, more powerful brand. The AFL merged into the NFL, what we now know is the NFL now, the AFC and the NFC. So I'm wondering, when we get to 2 mega conferences, and I got a lot of little bullet points here I'm going to talk about on this. When we get to the point where there is that scenario, if that is the scenario, I could be completely wrong on this. Will they be working together, or will they be working against each other? And that is a very, very important detail in this. And I don't know which way that's going to go because of their rivals. And also, you got to look at Fox and ESPN with this. That's 2 rival networks going head to head. Fox wants to beat ESPN, and ESPN wants to stay on top of the sports world and television and not let Fox take over that space. And Fox is the closest one to them with everything they do it. I mean, and this is a big move by Fox and the Big Ten going getting USC and UCLA. You're in the LA market now. That is huge. I guess you can say they're in the New York market with Rutgers, but not really. I mean, no one in New York. Let's be fair. People in New York, do they really care about college football? They may care about college basketball. The old Big East fans, but college football, they don't really care. I don't think in the New York, New Jersey area, but in LA, they do. They do when it comes to the USC Trojans. UCLA coming along with them. So that is a huge move. And of course, last year, Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC. But with the Big Ten, this is different because when you look at Oklahoma and Texas, yeah, they're more Southwest, but you can still sell it that we're still the SEC. We're the Southeastern Conference. That kind of fits, the geographics. When you look at USC and UCLA, that's different. That's two West Coast teams coming to play in a conference that traditionally is a Midwestern conference. So now that makes the Big Ten national. Now, the SEC is a national brand. We know that. But now the Big Ten is a national brand. They are national. And where are they going to go next? Of course, when all this happened, you had the Oregon and Washington conversation. Would they go next with them? Of course, the Notre Dame part of it. What's Notre Dame going to do? Will they join a conference? Of course, they got 1 foot in, 1 foot out with the ACC. They're into ACC and everything else. They play 5 or 6 ACC games a year in football, but they're not in a conference. They joined the ACC for 1 year in 2020 to help them out, to help Notre Dame out, and that during the COVID year. But they are independent. Do they want to keep that independence? They make the most sense in the Big Ten, but also would they turn down the SEC? I haven't seen anybody really of substance put out SEC Notre Dame. It seems like Big Ten Notre Dame, of course, ACC Notre Dame. And honestly, if Notre Dame goes to the ACC as a full-time member in football, then that does change things, from my opinion, on the two conferences, because then you have that brand name in Notre Dame along with the ACC. You've got Clemson. Hopefully, Miami is going to come on the rise once again with Mario Cristobal. I like what he's able to do as a recruiter. He's a good coach. We'll see if he can turn that program around and get them back to where Miami once was. If Florida State can get right again, you've got good programs. Pitt, that's another good program right now with football. Wake Forest is a good team. You got a good conference. They're not on the level of the Big Ten and the SEC, but you still have a solid league there with the ACC. Then you put in the big name brand of Notre Dame. And then with Notre Dame, their NBC deal, which I believe runs out either 2024 or 2025. Do you bring NBC with you? And that's another big thing for the Big Ten. The SEC is ESPN. They're in their final days of the CBS deal. They will fully be an ESPN product. But now, if you're the Big Ten, if you can get Notre Dame and they still keep their NBC contract, and you got Fox and NBC going up against the guy that's been on top of the mountain when it comes to broadcasting with sports and ESPN, that would be big too. So there's a lot of things here. And one of my first tweets when I saw the news about USC and UCLA was the fact is that Kevin Warren is savage, because this time last year, talking about the alliance between the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, and then we see what happens, right? They go out and they stab the Pac-12 in the back. Big Ten gets there too. I would say they're two most important universities in that conference, because once again, we're going to tie that back to the LA market. Now you kind of look at this deal. What happens to the Pac-12? My opinion, I think the Pac-12 is done. I do not see Oregon and Washington staying in the long run. I think they'll eventually get out of there. They will join another conference. And then also, if I'm wrong and we go beyond just the two conferences and we maybe have 3 or 4, who's going to be the third conference here? Now, as I said, you have the ACC, and there's rumors and speculation that ESPN may help a buyout, which I don't believe that. Then trying to get out of their media rights deal that they have with the ACC, which runs through 2036. I mean, ACC teams are locked in. But the Big 12 is in a good spot here. If they can get an Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, those teams make sense in the Big 12. And with the teams they have coming in from the AAC, of course, Oklahoma, Texas will be going to the SEC. You're a 16-team conference then. I mean, the Big 12 is going to be different every year for the next couple of years. It's really hard to really figure out what they're going to be. And then, we'll go back to the ACC. What teams, if the SEC going after teams, it seems like the SEC to me wants to stay in that Southeast footprint. Florida State, Clemson, maybe Miami, Georgia Tech, they make sense, those teams, but who knows what the SEC will do. Now, the one team in the SEC still that makes no sense is Missouri. I'm sorry if you're a fan of Missouri watching this, but that just has never made much sense to me. Missouri just has never been a fit in the SEC. We've seen North Carolina's name mentioned, Big Ten, SEC, stay in ACC. So it's going to be interesting. I think there's a battle there. We talk about the battle, Big Ten, SEC. I also am intrigued with the battle, who is third. The Pac-12 is out of it. They have no shot at this. I think the Pac-12 is done. It's over with as a big player in college athletics. That's just my opinion. But I believe the Big 12 and ACC will be two conferences fighting who's number 3. I do not think either one of them has any really chance to jump over to Big 10 or SEC because one of those two conferences are not done adding teams. But now you could see one of these two, and the Big 12 can add more. The ACC may be kind of stuck where they are at right now. So if it stays like that, I like the Big 12, what they're doing. And I think that really if you added Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, which would be funny for Colorado because they left the conference to go to the Pac-12, so then they went back to Big 12. That'd be quite interesting as well. So that would be a fun conference. And then there was a story out, too, about an ACC Pac-12 partnership or some kind of arrangement between the two. That will probably be the Pac-12's only chance of survival is to either partner with the ACC or the Big 12, but by itself, I just don't see it having much legs to stand on as a conference because you just lost your biggest media market with USC and UCLA. And I'm still going to say this. I've said this probably about 2 or 3 times in this opening monologue that I do believe that Oregon and Washington, I don't know anything. I don't have any sources. It's just kind of where I'm looking at things. You read stuff. You kind of see where trends are going. Those are 2 good brands, and you want to get in on one of these conferences because you don't want to be left outside of this. And I believe those 2 programs at some point, who knows when it will happen, but they will lead the Pac-12, in my opinion. But and it's all, I want to circle us back. This is, yes, it's SEC, Big Ten making some big moves these last 2 off seasons, but it's also Fox and ESPN trying to have the better product. This is all about TV. What's the better TV product? And those 2 are going at it, and it's the Big Ten and the SEC along with Fox and ESPN. Something else I missed while I was on break, and this happened really close to after I went on my little break too as well. Arch Manning to Texas. Now, I came close to just popping on YouTube and give my quick thoughts on this. And I won't go as long on this as I did the realignment stuff. But Arch Manning to Texas. I'm not shocked. And honestly, if you want to look at from just a branding move, this was big for Arch Manning to go to Texas. Because Texas, we all want Texas to be back. Everybody wants that. I think they do. Even if you say, if you're watching this or listening to this, you say, I cannot stand Texas. I hope they stay down. No, you don't. Texas is a big name brand. We love our big name brands, especially in this country we do. Everybody wants to see Dallas Cowboys be successful. Everybody wants to root against the New York Yankees. There's just certain brands we want to be successful, and I think we want Texas. That's why whenever Texas shows us any glimpse of being really good again, I think that is why that Texas is back thing pops up. And yes, they've had a year or there that was really good, but they're not consistent. They're not back. They have not been a national contender in a very, very long time. And then last season, and I had my doubts about Steve Sarkisian at Texas. I really did, because I just did not think he was the guy that you wanted to turn it around. But he had a big recruiting win. And before we talk about that, actually let me backtrack for a second here. Texas went 5-7 last year. They started 4-1, lost 6 in a row, then they ended the year with a win over Kansas State. That's not a good first year for Steve Sarkisian. But then he gets Arch Manning. And that's also a relationship thing too. I believe from the time when Sark was at Alabama, Alabama obviously was one of the teams in the running for Arch Manning. So that relationship also mattered. But I also believe this is a smart move by Arch Manning. He's already going to have a lot of pressure on him because he is the grandson of Archie Manning, the nephew of Eli and Peyton Manning. He is going to have so much pressure put on his shoulders to be really good because what his uncles did. Both won 2 Super Bowls, 2 of the best college quarterbacks we've ever seen. Success, success, success. Everything those 2 brothers and their dad have touched has been gold just about. Archie's NFL career was not, but everything else has been pretty good. But now you don't go to Alabama or Georgia, which made sense because Georgia's loaded at position, and so is Alabama now. And also you go there, you're going to places that are already established. If Arch Manning goes to Alabama or Georgia and he wins, he wins a Heisman, he wins a national championship. It's like, okay, we've had other guys do this. Stetson Bennett just won one from Georgia. Alabama's had multiple guys. You're just part of the machine, basically, of those 2 programs. But you look at Texas, as I said, they have wanted to be back, and I think college football fans, college football media has wanted Texas to be back too, because if Texas is big, that's just big for the sport. Once again, I'm going to say it's just good for the sport. We don't have to have Texas being good for it. College football be big. College football is big anyways, but it becomes bigger if Texas is good, in my opinion. But now you go to Texas, and if Texas gets really good, and let's just say this, I'm not saying they are going to do this, but let's just say if they become national contenders or they win a national title, or just make the playoff with him there, then you can say Arch Manning brought Texas back. Now, Sark is going to get a lot of the credit because he got the recruit to come in. And what also this does, and this was big just getting Arch Manning, now other recruits are going to want to come to Texas because they're going to want to be partnered with Arch Manning. Because, while yes, he has not proven it on the college football field yet, his name means a lot. The Mannings, in my opinion, are the first family of quarterbacking in football. Just what that family has done, the longevity those 2 quarterbacks had. I went over their resume briefly. Just everything that brand of a Manning does. Big time recruits are going to come to Texas. Texas is already doing well in recruiting. Now, Texas has got an interesting quarterback room. Now you've got Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card. Hudson Card started last year. He got benched. He struggled. And he got benched after the Arkansas defeat. Quinn Ewers, he reclassified. He went to Ohio State, where I had 2 snaps at Ohio State. He transfers to Texas. Now, he's used up his transfer. So, he does not have a free transfer. If he transfers again, he has to sit out a year. Now, of course, Arch Manning will not officially be – it'll be 2023 season when he's there. So, you would expect – I'm expecting Quinn Ewers to be the starting quarterback for Texas this season. But 2023, what happens? Will they say, okay, he'll be the quarterback then, and then in 2024, Arch Manning will be the quarterback? Or will we see Arch Manning take over 2023? The 2023 quarterback battle at Texas is going to be very intriguing with the Quinn Ewers part of this and now Arch Manning being there. And I want to say this too as well. I do not think Texas will be bad. I think they'll be an 8-9 win team this upcoming season. I think Sarkisian will have that thing better. And Sarkisian's a good coach. He was not bad at USC and Washington. Just his off the field situation at USC is what led to that dismissal there. But with Texas, but let's just put a hypothetical out there, and I would really love to hear your thoughts on this. If Texas struggles in 2022, maybe a 6-6 year, or maybe another 5-7 year. I don't think that happens, but just what if? What if that does happen? Well, Texas say, look, we've had back-to-back losing seasons. Should we get rid of Sark and bring somebody else in? But then you run the risk and a possibility of Arch Manning saying, okay, if you fire him after this year, I'm just going to go somewhere else. You don't want that. And then at the same time, you don't want to be firing coaches left and right either. So you know there's some positivity coming with the program. Once again, I don't think Texas is going to be bad. I think they win 8 or 9 games this upcoming year. But if it went the other direction, would Texas pull the trigger on Sark, or say, no, we can't. He's got Arch Manning coming. Good days are in front of us. We just have to ride this out. And once again, you just can't keep recycling through coaches. And you do need to have some consistency in your program when you do make that jump to the SEC. And so that's very important for Texas. So it's going to be very interesting, but I'll be interested. What are your thoughts on Arch Manning to Texas and the future of Texas and Steve Sarkisian and pretty much everything going around with Texas football? And that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillip Jordan podcast. Thank you for making the show a part of your day. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast. Phillip Jordan podcast is there. You can check it out over on YouTube as well. Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the channel and also hit the bell for notifications, and also leave a comment on a video. I will read that on a future edition as well. You can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.